Hello, thanks for joining us on your channel of choice at this time, Africa Independent Television AIT. Welcome to Focus Nigeria, your program that puts the searchlight on topical issues in the polity. My name is Benga Aruleba. For those still wondering or disputing the fact of the release of 82 Chibok girls, well, help your case by looking for the names and pictures displayed over 2 years ago. Get the names of the 82 girls that were released on Saturday because the names are out now. Then on your own, do a cross match. After that, you can resume your conspiracy theories of, the guys were never missing in the first place. Somebody was keeping them somewhere. It was all a plot by somebody long ago to divert our attention for 3 years. Oh, the guys are looking so robust and well kept. Somebody must have been keeping them somewhere. Who bought Ashwebi for them? You know, na real wa. Anyway, but let's call attention to something much more productive and more challenging. On Sunday, 39-year-old Emmanuel Macron made history by becoming the youngest person to be elected as the president of France. Macron won a decisive victory over Ms. Marine Le Pen of the far-right party, a party founded by her father. Apart from his age, which in itself is one of the defining features of this momentous occasion in France, there are several others. First is that Macron's En Marche movement is relatively new, formed just barely 3 years ago, after he left the government of President Francois Hollande as the minister in charge of the economy, to form the centrist party, which has operated more like a democratic political revolution, not strictly sensu a political party. Now, from this position of nothing but a political upstart, Emmanuel Macron shocked the world when he emerged the strongest of 7 candidates in the presidential election last month, to then force a runoff with Ms. Le Pen in the election that he eventually won with overwhelming majority of well over 65% on Sunday. Now, at 39, Macron is still, a youth, within the global definition that is, and perhaps under the Nigerian constitution, he is certainly underaged and not qualified to contest the office of president or even that of the vice president. But another paradox to draw from the French election is the fact that Le Pen contested as a woman, something yet to happen in our climb, even though it's a global trend. But here in Nigeria, with a youth population of over 70 million, probably or more, but a population that has largely been left with the crumbs of political office, there is so much to learn when you compare the Nigerian situation with the developments in France. And these useful lessons are what we want to be drawing shortly. How do we leverage, or how can we leverage on our youth population with enormous potentials to positively alter our political journey? Can the Macron phenomenon, whereby a young man confronted the establishment, shunned the 2 established political platforms in this country, launched a political revolution of his own within 3 years, and took the world by storm? Can we have same here, leveraging on our enormous youth population? Can we tinker a little bit, for instance, with our leadership recruitment process? The Nigerian youth and the challenges of leadership, that is the focus of today's conversation. But just before the discussions, let's tell you something that you probably may not be aware of. One of the most recent appointments made by President Muhammadu Buhari not too long ago was that of Otumba Olusegun Orishewe, who, as Director General of the Council for Arts and Culture. Now, Otumba Orishewe is a household name, a name he made long ago, first when he was in charge of media and publicity for the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit that Nigeria hosted, that's CHOGOM, that Nigeria hosted in Abuja during the Obasanjo presidency. And it was from there that that President Obasanjo spotted his enormous potentials and then appointed him as DG of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, NTDC. Now, it was at the NDC that he took the tourism sector to a greater height and was in the process of completing a tourism sector policy to open up that sector to investors when then President Goodluck Jonathan unceremoniously removed him. The NTDC has yet to recover from that setback since then. Now, tourism sector watchers were therefore jubilant when recently Rushewe was named as DG of the National Council for Arts and Culture. Now, less than 3 weeks in office, like a man primed for action, Rushewe has hit the ground running with his first policy outing, which is an initiative to generate about 200,000 jobs within the next couple of months through a funding initiative for eligible entrepreneurs in the arts and culture sector. The Bank of Industry is already supporting this job policy initiative with an initial sum of 300 million naira, which will likely graduate to about 1 billion naira by the end of this year, and of course to double the job opportunities to about 500,000. An MOU to this effect was signed a couple of days ago.
We believe that what this partnership will produce is that we'll be able to organize Nigerians who are involved in these businesses and those who want to go into the handcraft business. Most of them are doing this informally. But through this collaboration, we're able to formalize their operations. The MOU provides for jointly building their capacities, helping them to organize their businesses. Because it's when they're able to organize their businesses that they're able to meet our risk acceptance criteria.
I want to tell the MD and the management that BOI is making history to be the first bank in the history of our country to give a corporate support to this sector, which is the most important. We have come to BOI to make sure that we empower our people. Hundreds of jobs will be created. Millions of jobs, because the MD has confirmed to me that once we perform on this, we'll expand it. And I'm telling you, this may be the beginning of Nigerians standing on the streets looking for what to do.
Well, like they say, that's what is called abinibi. And it's different from ability. They sound alike, but they're different. Abinibi is inborn, and ability is what you labor to acquire. When you are born with it, it's natural, which means it's innate. That's abinibi. And that's what Rushewe stands for. And I can tell you that because I know this man very much, and I know there's so much more to come. He has so much up his sleeves, which we'll probably be telling you at some point in time, maybe when we have the man on this platform. Just watch out and you'll see. All right, let's get back to our topic of conversation today, as I already told you. Emmanuel Macron, the 39-year-old young man, is set to become the next president of France. I mean, Macron qualifies as Mr. El Phenomenon in the first place. What can Nigerian youth learn from the history that is unfolding rapidly in France? A 39-year-old man defies all the odds, set up a political movement, and in less than 3 years has used that to galvanize himself to the topmost position in his country. We'll be seeing what we can learn from all of that. That's the subject of our conversation shortly.
They see chaos and conflicts. We see community action for good governance. They see poverty and want. We see perseverance and the will to go on. They see economic law. We see the ingenuity and creative spirit of our people. We are AIT News, fresh, authentic views of Africa. How would you rather see the world? AIT News, all sides, all the time.
All right, if you're just joining us, a very warm welcome to you. Just as I also warmly welcome my guest this morning, Funke Barua is joining us for these discussions. She's a Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Women's Trust Fund. She's also a gender advocate. You don't belong to the feminist movement, do you?
I am a feminist. Newsflash.
Anyway, good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year too.
Happy New Year.
Samson Itodo is also on the platform this morning. Samson is Executive Director, YAGA. YAGA is Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. Not too young to run. Good
Thanks
to see you,
for having
Samson.
me. Pleasure being here again.
If Macron were to be a Nigerian, and if the events in France were to be in Nigeria, he probably wouldn't be a candidate because he would definitely be underage, and INEC probably wouldn't have qualified him to contest that election, because that's our own situation.
No, he would have run.
At 39?
However, perhaps after winning,
He would be disqualified.
the election might be nullified because INEC cannot do anything based on Section 31 of the Electoral Act.
Probably maybe somebody
who
will
is
get
it?
wind that, oh, he's 39, not yet of age, and then probably go to court to stop him from contesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but let's start our own situation from there. Is it a plus that a 39-year-old Nigerian, in the eyes of our constitution, is not old enough to be president of Nigeria? And unless you are 35 and above, you are not qualified to be a governor of a state. Good or bad?
It's definitely not a plus, and I think it's bad. It's bad because we have eliminated the majority of our population. Nigeria is a youth population. According to our demography, says that the majority of our populace are young people.
Yeah,
And
I think over 70.
Over 70%. So if you disenfranchise over 70% of your population from participating in the decision-making process, then who are you making decisions for? You know, so you can't shave a person's head in their absence. That's an adage that we use here. I think we're losing cerebral leadership that we could have otherwise gotten from our young people by putting speed blocks or speed breaks to checkmate those who should turn out as leaders. I mean, France has done us proud. 39. It's remarkable. You know, and we don't have that here, and I don't know what our leaders are still waiting for. We need to check these laws, you know, that bridle young people from participating in the democratic space. And that's why I'm so happy that Samson is here, because the Not Too Young to Run bill, I would have expected by now everyone in the House to be, or in the Senate to be singing that song right now. And let's make sure we pass that bill.
At 39, like we started, Macron will probably not be president in Nigeria. I would probably not dare dream of it when he has the old order to contend with. But here is a man who defied that order. Not that they don't have such old order too in that country, but defied all of it. Before now, he had also made history, was in charge of he was Minister of Economy.
Yeah.
2014, up until 2014 and all of that. But for the fact that he branched out, looked to the left, didn't find favor with that party, looked to the right, didn't see anything worthwhile in it, and launched a political movement of his own. And in less than 3 years, galvanized the whole of the country to begin to look in his direction. Now that's phenomenal. Can that happen in Nigeria?
Well, that can happen in Nigeria under a lot of circumstances. For me, I have summarized Macron's victory in 5 broad lessons.
5.
The first is the fact that it's now a global trend, and I hope our leaders and our National Assembly members and political parties and even voters are seeing the fact that you don't necessarily have to be a Methuselah in politics before you run for office or hold certain positions. All you need is knowledge. And it's about knowledge of the trend and also knowledge of your audience. Now, what Macron did. And you saw that even happen in the US elections with Trump's victory. And Trump led an anti-establishment movement. He didn't need to be in politics for 20, 30 years. All he needed was just that knowledge. And so for young people and for us in our own context, it's not about how old you've been in politics. It's about knowledge, and knowledge of your audience, and as well as knowledge of the trend and what are the key issues. Because Macron actually didn't campaign because he was a youth. He campaigned based on his ideological conviction. And the point must be made that the reason why he could run was because there was a legal environment that allowed him to do. For us in our own context, the legal environment does not allow young people who have strong ideological convictions and who have capacity to run for office, or women to actualize their political aspirations and goals. The second is the fact that capitalizing on opportunities. And what Macron saw was an opportunity because he had very good relationship with Frank Hollande. And what he did, he saw that the party was already losing touch with the people. And what he saw that opportunity and decided to break away from that party and build his own movement. For us in our climb, what you see is the fact that a lot of young people, or even women, or even politicians, are tied to the apron strings of godfathers. Now, what Macron did was to break away and say, yes, I know that you have been a mentor. Because he started in 2012. Yeah. But he broke away and started building his own movement. Yeah. And which brings me to the third lesson, that politics is local. And it's about building grassroots movement. And what he did with the knowledge of the trend, with the knowledge of his audience, he built that movement from scratch. Keep in mind that that movement also had financial challenges, but they surmounted those challenges and yet ran for office. The fourth key lesson is about capacity. That capacity is key. And when we talk about not too young to run, it's not creating space for every youth. No, first, it's about inclusion. But second, it's about capacity, it's about competence, it's about the moral capital or the moral integrity to hold that office. And that was what gave Macron that victory, because he had the capacity. And having been in office, he understood first business, he also understood how politics was run, and then he ventured into politics. And then the fourth, it's about optimism. Now, you could see that within the context of the debate between globalization and populism, he brought hope. And that is one thing you can't take from the youth population. The fact that we are transformational and we're not transactional, the fact that we are adventurous. So we've got a different view of how our society should be. And it is based on that Macron was more optimistic. He acknowledged, and even after the victory, that the challenges are daunting. However, he didn't say I. He said we can surmount our challenge. And he gave hope to the French people. He didn't just give hope to the French people. He also gave hope to Europe, as well as young people, as opposed to a Marine Le Pen who was very, very pessimistic about the future of France, and with all her own targets or her own goals or a manifesto. So these are for me the key lessons to learn, even situating this within our context. That yes, it's not too young to run. It's not just about the age. Reducing the age. It's about the fact that we've got young people who have capacity to hold this office. But first, we must create that level playing field. And that's what it does.
We'll try to see how we can bring all of these and superimpose it on the Nigerian situation shortly. But let me ask Funke again. As a feminist, which one gave you joy better? The fact that a woman ran, lost, or a young man ran and defeated a woman?
Okay, for me, I would want to first say that politics is about ideology. Yes, in developing countries, populism and all that sometimes wins. But what happened in France has shown us that populism will no longer win, but ideologies would rather surmount. Now, it's like what Samson said. The fact that we're saying not too young to run doesn't mean every leadership position has to be filled by young people. Yeah. And know that young people are qualified, and young people would have to hold positions of authority whether or not they have what it takes to be there. So he mentioned capacity. Yeah. He mentioned, I would add an ideology. What exactly do you believe in? He mentioned probably character. There's so many knowledge of the system. Yeah.
Even though I need to clarify that knowledge, whether it has to do with education and all of that. Experience. And then, of course, we again look at what the Constitution of Nigeria says.
So there's so many factors, about leadership. It's not just whether you're male or female, young or old. So for me also, it's victory for inclusion. We're actually preaching inclusion, like he said, not necessarily for young people 15 or 18 or 30 to hold leadership positions, or for women. So it has nothing to do with just the fact that he won and a woman lost. It's still a victory for democracy as far as I'm concerned. Let the best candidate win, but let everyone have equal playing field to run. What we have in Nigeria is uneven field. The goalpost shift when it has to do with young people. It moves a little further or forward or backward when it has to do with women. But the goalpost always stays the same when it has to do with the usual suspects who want to run for office. So that's what we're saying. Let there be an opportunity for anybody who wants to run for office to be able to do so. And that's why we need a change of ideology around what our politics should be, who should hold our leadership positions, what are the structures we have in place that throws up who a leader should be, rather than the popular notion. When you ask the average Nigerian who is a leader, I've asked this question a lot of times. People close your eyes and just tell me who a leader is. I start with a word. People say he must be experienced, wise, and those things begin to remove some people. First they said he, so that means it must be a male. Then experience, and in our context, when you say experience, people begin to talk about 15, 20 years. You find politicians say, I've been in this game since 1999, and so what? Someone who has just been on the scene for 5 years won. And that means that experience itself is subjective.
Relative, yeah.
It's a relative term.
I'm just wondering whether some of these things ought to evolve, or we need to make conscious effort to have them.
Yeah, it should evolve, but also
how will it evolve with this kind of situation we have? When you look at our leadership recruitment system, unless you are this, you can't be this. Even in terms of appointment, we see the justice. Just recently, list of how many people? 47 or so non-career ambassadors sent to the National Assembly. I didn't see anybody that was 35 there. Maybe I don't know. I think there were so many, about 7 or 8. There were over 70. In fact, about 12, not 8, about 12.
If I may
that
take
day,
that.
unfortunately, I don't have the list
Our
there.
politics, like you say, is transactional
Yes.
and reward-based. Positions are
do we have to
reward-based.
make conscious effort to change all of that, or we decree them into existence? Because I'm sure what happened in France wasn't decreed. It evolved. Can the Nigerian situation evolve the way the situation in France evolved?
The truth is,
if it can evolve, what is holding the youth population down?
I think the point must be made, and we need that consensus as a people. We need to decide for ourselves whether we want to move from, whether we regard ourselves either as a developing nation or an underdeveloped nation. If we want to move from a developing nation to a developed nation, we also need to decide for ourselves whether we want to move from the third world to perhaps the first world. That's a decision we must make if we want to progress. And I make the assumption that as a people, we want to progress. We want democratic development. We want good governance, because that's the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians, as well as the ruling political elite. If we must move, then we must make conscious efforts first to create that level playing field for everybody. And it begins with our law, the Constitution. How do you create that space? Because the French Constitution provided that space, and that was why Macron was able to run. The second, and this for me is very, very key, and there are three key things. One is the place of intergenerational dialogue. You can't, and when you talk about leadership recruitment process, you talk about favoritism, parochialism, and all this nepotism that informs how we select and how we recruit our leaders. That needs to change. It needs to change. And first, intergenerational dialogue is key. We don't invest in building leadership. In fact, we don't, our own understanding of leadership is not service. And that's some unlearning that people who are currently in office, and even we as citizens, must imbibe. We must unlearn and change our psychology of leadership. That's something that will take a lot of civic education, as well as symbolic form of leadership. And people who are in decision-making offices or places will need to take some decisions that changes our behavioral pattern. And we need to invest. We need mentorship. Now, how can public leaders who siphon public monies, who store stolen monies either in buried grounds, cemeteries, or sockaway, serve as mentors? They are not providing mentorship for young people who aspire for public leadership. So we need a very, very deliberate effort towards building leadership capital in young people. And it has to be practical, because people who are in office today need to demonstrate that they are in leadership offices for service. Now, look at our political parties, for instance. There is no political party today that has got a leadership development program that is targeted at building the capital of young people who are in the political parties. And that is a huge anomaly. If you go across Africa, if you go to South Africa, go to Kenya, go to Uganda, the political, even Ghana, who do have a leadership development program that has got political mentorship mainstreamed therein to build the capacity of young people who are members of the political parties, or even women. We do not have youth wings of our political parties today. Now, you can talk of a Julius Malema, who was a former ANC youth leader. In fact, even Nelson Mandela was actually an ANC youth leader. But their capacity was built because they had very, very functional youth wings. So we must invest in building leadership, building mentorship, as well as promoting intergenerational dialogue. The second thing, we also need to expand our own concept of leadership beyond politics to business, academics, and even entrepreneurship, or even sports. Now, if you check Macron's history, he also had a stint when it comes to business. And I think that's something, there's a linkage between our socioeconomic engagement as well as our political engagement. And that's something that we need to focus our attention on. And the third is we need clear pathways for leadership development as well as transition in politics. Today, I am strongly of the view that the reason why you continue to have a National Youth Council decimated, the National Association of Nigerian Students also decimated, is because we do not have clear pathways for transition. And so these young people who have been leaders of these particular institutions will continue to hold sway in those institutions and not transit. So that transition needs to be there. And our political parties and our ruling political elite must create that space. And the point, of course, that power is not ceded. No one will give you power. You have to take it. But in taking it as young people, we must do so from an ideological, a strong conviction in our ideology as well as our capacity.
The problem is who bears the cut. Because if you look at the youth movement, for instance, it mentioned two very critical ones. The National Youth Council has been polarized for years. There are so many, at least by the last count, there were at least four four or five persons laying claims to the presidency of the Nigeria Youth Council. Same can be said of the National Association of Nigerian Students. Not what it used to be, when you had student union leaders who transited from being student union leaders and transited into public service. The Segun Okeowos, who also made very good show of life in public service and all of that. But it's different today. The question is, what happened and who will bail the cat? Who takes the initiative?
I think we got comfortable. For me, we got very comfortable with our status quo. A number of people are benefiting from the status quo. They are the minority. Not everybody is benefiting from what the current political imbroglio we're in. But we, the citizens, we, the masses, if I may use that word, we got very comfortable and we got helpless. I would like to use the example of Liberia and how Ellen Johnson Sirleaf emerged. When I was reading her book, Madam President, Nigeria, Africa's first female president, some portions of the book said that women in Liberia got tired of the wars, the drama, the killings. They were losing their sons, they were losing their daughters, their husbands, and they got tired. And they decided that enough. Women brought Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to power. So young people, women, excluded population can decide. When we've decided on our own, made up our minds that we've had enough. They did so many things. Let me, to make you laugh, one of them was that some women seized their husbands' PVCs. I don't know what they call their own voter's card over there. Seized it, they tore it up, they starved their children, male children who are over 18 of food. You need to read that book. They did all sorts of unconventional things. I'm not proposing that. I'm just saying that when you get to a stage that you get tired of the status quo. So one thing is we've not had enough. For me, number one.
We're still in our comfort zone.
We've not had enough. When we've had enough, then we will rise up and form the kind of movement that brought someone like a Macron to power. We've got the population. We've got the knowledge. You said you wanted us to define what knowledge. I am not even seeing any. I'm sorry, all the political parties that I have seen now, I don't see anyone that tells me this is our ideology. For me, they are one of the same kind. It's just a difference in names. In terms of ideology, what is the ideology of one political party, I won't call names, to the other? What can you say is specific to this party? So you leave the young people, you leave the women, you leave the excluded masses. And by the way, I always call for a block strategy. I'm not talking about women alone. I'm talking about excluded groups like women, young people, and even persons with disability. Go check in all positions in Nigeria, which ones are even which ones have any person with disability. It's as if they don't even exist.
Yet
and
then
we have
population.
It's about 15%. We don't even consider them at all. So we need to get tired. So talking about it on social media, okay, activism is good, social causes are good, but when you get tired of something, you now begin to do something about and walk the talk. We need to put our money where our mouth is.
Samson, you raised the issue of knowledge, and I was wondering whether it was book knowledge or all of that. And I was just going to take you straight to, what do we expect when the Constitution doesn't require you to be knowledgeable about anything before you can aspire to be president of Nigeria, before you can aspire to be governor of a state, before you can aspire to be a senator? It says for you to be a president. It didn't even say you must have certificate. It says you must have.
I understand this argument.
So if you attended secondary school and you drop out, in the eyes of the Constitution, you are qualified.
He said structure. The structures that bring up our leadership.
That is one structure. It's very warped. Very warped.
In relation,
that is one structure that is cast.
In relation, and this argument is neither here nor there, and it didn't start today. And a lot of people, in fact, when we started the Not Too Young to Run campaign, people had advocated that, come on, why not we up the threshold for educational qualification? Well, it's neither here nor there, and both sides have very, very valid arguments. But the context of Macron's elections and his victory, quite frankly, it can be argued that you need some level of education to understand whether call it complex policy issues or macroeconomic policies, or whatever, our understanding government and how government actually works. Some might actually argue that, yes, you need that level of understanding. But some might also tell you that leadership is not necessarily about your education qualification. It's also about your interpersonal relationship, putting together a team who are experts in different aspects of governance to provide you that sort of...
Is there any world leader today who is not educated?
Well, it's relative, because for me, when I talked about knowledge, I am looking at knowledge from the standpoint of understanding, no, not necessarily education, but first understanding the people, understanding your audience, and also understanding the issue. No, yes, education makes that possible. But to what extent? And that's why the Constitution tries to make it at least very, very minimal, which is your first school, what they call first school living certificate. I think education is key, and we need people who are educated, especially, for instance, in the National Assembly. You need people who have that strong educational background, at least the basics. You should know how to read, you should know how to write, and also understand. So you're able to engage people and understand those policies. So I completely agree. But yes, acquire all the education. But there are people who are very educated, who are not necessarily, who don't really understand the people, who don't even understand the trends and understand the issues. We have governors today who have lost elections on the basis of the fact that they didn't understand the audience, they didn't understand the people, they didn't understand the priorities of the people. They are probably too technical for the people, and the people are very, very concerned at the basics. That's what they care about: what they eat, what they drink, the shelter over their head, as well as just transportation, just or shelter. That's the basics that they really concerned about. And they need someone who understands it, who speaks to those issues, and who can repose confidence in them and demonstrate capacity to do what? To address those issues. Because for me, leadership is about solving problems. Yeah. And if you can't solve a problem, especially in electoral politics, then there's no need actually running for office.
In Nigerian politics, whatever works against the youth, of course, definitely works against the women. Let's look at efforts to empower women politically. The Women Trust Fund, for instance, is one of such efforts. But is it working at all? If after all these years, the best we've had is women, well, maybe they are in the National Assembly now, the State Houses of Assembly. But when are we going to have a woman on his own, on our own, working and becoming maybe a governor in the state in Nigeria? Or even a formidable presidential candidate?
I wish I could just give you a year and date. Well, the women.
Are we making progress in trying to break down the barriers?
I would say that we're making progress. It might not be as much as we would expect. I mean, we're making progress. We're talking about these issues. People are even beginning to see a woman as a leader. These were not things that were easy to come by in those days. You'd be shouted down. Why? Go home, take care of your husband or your children. So we've evolved. I think we're doing much better than where we used to be. The numbers may not be speaking well to us, and they may not be very good right now. But the Women Fund, like you mentioned, is a technical and financial resource that helps to ensure that more women are in the decision-making process. So, and to do this, you don't just wake up one day and then just have many women in positions of leadership. You have to start a process. And one of the things we do, and I'm glad something mentioned it, is mentorship, which we started for young women to even begin to let young women feel that they can. And the fact that we're even having these changes in our young women alone, for me, it's a gain. The fact that young people can come up today and think up an idea and say, not too young to run bill. We didn't have this 5 years ago. It's a gain. So we're making progress. We need to, of course, scale up our efforts to make sure we do better. And the mentorship program I talked about, we're doing this in collaboration with even women in offices, and we're asking them to adopt a political protege. Groom someone like yourself. The men do that a lot, and I must give men credit for that. As a man, there are men who are lined up for 2019 to 2023 to 2027. I don't know if I got the dates right. But do we have women looking that far into the future? Another thing, so that's one, we are changing perception. There's social change, there's practice change. Women now know that they can run for office. Women are no longer shy about running for office. Where we started before was on advocacy. Just even let women believe that they can run for office. So we are beyond that now. Now we're looking at capacity building. What are the skills you need? The men had over, how many years to do this? So they have more experience. So we need to catch up with the men. We're not going to play the game the game the way the men are playing it, because we're going to look at issue based. We can't match men money for money, naira for naira, a dollar for dollar, and the rest of them right now, which is where our politics leans towards. But you can come up with something else, you know. He talked about the basics, the issues that matter more to the people. And number 3 is we need a legal environment that allows women and young people to participate in politics. Countries that have achieve some form of parity in terms of women and men have done so consciously. The women didn't just get up one day. In US, less than 100 years ago, women couldn't even vote in the US. So they've gone far. So you must make a conscious effort. And that's why we talk about things like twinning, zebra formulas, where you have deputy male and then female as the head, or the other way around. We need to begin. We need a bill, for instance, like the GEO bill, to be passed. We need an electoral law, the reform of the electoral law, to begin to say we need affirmative action.
That would be a conscious
and
effort.
It is an entry point. So people who say no, women should come up or come out and run just like the men. I love one statement by President Winston Churchill, I think in 1949 at his this university in the US, where he said you can't bring a person who for years has been tied down with chains, bring him up to the start line, and then bring another athlete who's been training for years and put two of them together and say, okay, take the 100-meter dash. That's what you are doing to young people and women when you say nobody is holding young people back, come up and run. The law itself holds us back. So you must bring women at par. You must have an entry. The 35% we ask for instance, is not, it's just a means to an end. It's a starting point. It just brings you to the decision-making table. And let me say, when you're not on the table, when young people are not on the table and women are not on the decision-making table, do check. They are probably being served for lunch. When you are not on the table making decisions, you are on the table as the meal. And that's what is happening. It is the issues that have to do with young people, the issues that have to do with women that, are trashed anyhow, and the men are busy discussing.
Let's come back. I asked much earlier whether these things need to evolve. If they need to evolve, how long will it take? And if we need to stampede it to, to probably fast-track the process, what do we need to do? We have over almost 60 registered political parties. About 70 or so are still waiting to be registered. I know that some of them may probably lean towards the youth and all of that. But we've seen some political parties that are even existing, that are populated mainly by youth. And we can, from a position of an observer, you could see the infighting. The youth cannot agree to a common purpose and all of that. And I'm wondering, even if you make conscious effort, there's still some things that will take a long time to break down.
I completely agree with you, because a lot of things will actually take.
And that's what is going to happen if you have a not too young to run B.
I think that there are steps that can be taken to address these challenges. And each of them will probably have short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. I think the first unprecedented step we can take as a country is to amend our most important political and legal document, which is our Constitution. Okay. And that, because we are a constitutional democracy, so it is important. That's a first step. And I think if this 8th Assembly successfully rejigs or amends our Constitution, they would have created that space, that level playing field, based on the legal construction in our constitution.
Which particular aspect of the ones
reducing
related
the age?
to
Yeah, the ones relating to age, because you
Okay.
create that access
and if I may add,
for
also putting some form of affirmative action for young
Okay.
people,
As
persons
well.
with disability, and women to participate. A certain percentage, and make it compulsory.
because that would inform the political parties and how the parties operate in outlining guidelines for the emergence of candidates at the party level. The second is a conversation around independent candidature, which needs to be mainstreamed into our own electoral law. And if that is done, it would also create that space for young people, women, or persons with disability to participate in the process. There are also actions that our political parties need to take. Our political parties, presently so-called, are not healthy. We need political institutions that are, in the true sense, political parties that consider themselves as developmental organizations. You don't have very, very active political parties. All our political parties are sick, be it APC or PDP. They all have their own issues. The issue around membership. No political party today in Nigeria has got an updated membership register.
because the parties are not anchored. The strength of the political parties are not anchored on their membership.
Yeah.
Because if they are anchored on the membership, that means it is the members that provide the fund.
Then the
that-
law
that-
is
that
very,
is
very
why-
law
that is
comes
why-
that dictate what should happen.
That is why that needs to change,
That's where
because
the law comes
political
in. INEC
parties
can
in the
make
true
sure- can request
sense
for that.
of it must have proper institutional
Membership,
framework on how they operate. And first is about members. So it is very, very important. And those are, because when you recruit, when you have an updated valid membership base or register, you've got young people who will come and they will be members of political parties, and they can advocate within the political parties because they are members of the parties. They subscribe to the ideologies of the parties, and they can promote the parties. So that's very, very important. Our parties also need to prioritize engagement and inclusion. They have to be inclusive in their approach. And internal party democracy is very, very key in ensuring that we address all of these challenges. Because you can't tell me where a party is run by hegemons who determine which candidate emerges at the party, who determine delegates to a party congress, be it direct or indirect, but you do not have regards for even the members of your party, and that's something that really needs to change. So these are practical actions that political parties on their part can also take. And I think that for we as citizens, we also need to rejig our own concept of leadership and what we want to see. Do we want to continually see people see the faces that we've been seeing before, or because we think that the fact that someone has been in politics for a particular number of years means that person is experienced and he understands our problems? What we currently face in this country has actually rebutted that argument about experience. What is currently going on in this country, it's not necessarily about experience. Because if about experience, then we shouldn't be where we are today. We shouldn't have resident electoral commissioners who are yet to be appointed today. We shouldn't have late appointment of ambassadors. We shouldn't have late appointments of heads of government institutions. If it's about experience or it's about the number of years that you've been in office. So it's not about that. That's why when you talk about knowledge, Macron didn't need to be in politics for 20 years. He just knew the people, he knew the trends, and he capitalized on it. So that's something that needs to change. And we as a people need to be sensitive to this. So when 2019 comes, it's not about these people who have been there before, but people who understand the issues. And for me, not because I'm a young person, but honestly, considering the level where we are as a country, you need a mix of young people, their innovation, their resilience, and their capacity in that room. You need women, you need persons with disability. We also need the wisdom of the elderly. Everybody has to be in that room. But as it is now, you only have the elderly who are currently in that room. So it makes it very, very difficult for them to think about new ways of doing things.
quickly, your final comment on how to break into that room so that everybody that needs to be at the table can be there and everybody's interest is taken on board.
Well, I think we've been breaking the glass ceiling as far as women are concerned, one crack at a time. We need to continue to put that crack in the glass ceiling. We can't stop right now. And we also need the law. Our laws hold us back. The first thing for me in all of this, my takeaway would be we need to change our legal framework. First things first, because we have a constitution and we are roped in by that constitution. We can't, our hands are tied. So we first need that to be amended. I hope the Electoral Reform Committee can achieve this once and for all. Let's change some basic things so we can have a radical change in our decision-making process.
All right. Eduardo Jeff, we once had a youth as Speaker of House of Reps, and what did he do? Let's talk of competence instead of this lazy rhetoric. I'm sure the situation would have developed better. I know their history, and I don't want to join issues with Eduardo because the young man had to make himself qualify educationally, different from the vision he had for that office.
But you know, in fact, it went down in history.
And for the short period,
even the best speaker that
exactly.
In fact,
it probably would have been the best speaker today.
We were in a meeting with the current deputy speaker last week, and this issue actually came up, and he said we lost the opportunity to have the best speaker of the House of Reps at that time.
So it's not about the educational qualification, again, which is what you said much earlier on. Unfortunately, it's Eduardo's tweet alone that I could read, even though there are so many other tweets. Okpayemi here, for instance, saying we need specific section in our political parties' constitutions. All parties must present 35% youth women during elections. That, again, purchases what Funke has been saying all along. Thank you so much. We're out of time. Funke Barua is Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria Women's Trust Fund. She's also a gender advocate. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Samson Itodo is Executive Director, Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure.
Very soon, maybe next week, we'll be able to look at the ongoing the continuous voter registration. I know you'll be doing a lot of sensitization in that. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Do have a nice day. Thank you too for investing your time with us. I'll see you tomorrow. God willing. Enjoy the rest of the day.